Hey, welcome back, everyone, once again to the Week 6 Fantasy Football Preview Edition of the Football Goons podcast. It's about that time of the year to start making a serious run for your playoff position, or if you're me, to just maybe win a game. And to start making some forward-thinking moves. And that's kind of going to be the overarching theme of tonight's episode as well. So we're going to break it all down for you this week as usual, look at some of the waiver stuff as well. But we like to open things up on the lighter side. So I'm going to let Miles take the wheel on this one.
Yeah, so we're down here. The baseball playoffs are on my TV. I've got some Yankees Red Sox going on. And I try to make it no secret. I really don't care about baseball at all, but just something to look at every once in a while to kind of feed the ADD is nice. So my question to you guys is this. Of the four major sports, hockey, basketball, baseball, football, which postseason do you care about the most and which one do you care about the least if your team is not involved? I don't care about Yankees, Red Sox. If the Phillies were on, I'm all in. They're definitely not on. So kind of most and least, or just rank them 1 to 4. Which postseason is the best without including the fact that your team is or is not in it?
I mean, I hold no punches that hockey is my least favorite sport, which is kind of insane because it really is a fun sport to watch.
And it might be the best postseason.
Oh, gosh. It's 7 months long.
Yeah, so I wish I could get more into hockey, but I think I'm going to go with hockey just because it's my least favorite of the four majors.
So
and football is my favorite to watch. So regardless, I mean, I watch football. I'd watch the Alouettes play the Stampeders. I really don't care.
You said this is assuming that your team's not in any of them.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously if your team's in, you're all in.
Okay. Go ahead, South.
First of all, you keep the Stampeders out of your mouth unless you're going to talk nicely about them. All right. Second, for me, the one I find most interesting is football, just because it's one game. You know, there's no series involved. It's win or go home. So that element of it
doesn't take half the year.
Well, I don't even care about that. If it's a good series, it's fine. You know, we've had some really great classic series over the year. Like if you could tell me we're going to get a series like the 2004, Red Sox Yankees series all the time, then tell me you're not going to buy into that regardless of how long.
I don't ever want that. I almost had a heart attack 3 times.
My least favorite is the NBA, just because there are so many bad teams who make the playoffs that it's just until you get to the conference finals, it's really not that entertaining to watch. I don't want to see the Wizards get stomped by the Celtics 4 times. It's just, I'm not interested in it. So that would be my least. Baseball is number 2. Hockey's number 3.
Interesting to note that South picked his least favorite sport out of the 4, and I picked my least favorite sport out of the 4. I feel like that's the way we're going to go with this.
See, mine's actually not. Basketball is easily my second favorite sport. It's kind of a 1B at this point, and I think it's the worst postseason of the 4.
Oh, wow.
Because of exactly what South said. Now, the conference finals and the finals, I make it a best of 21. I don't care. I'll watch that all day, but I just don't want to see the Bucks other than Giannis play. I don't want to see that.
Yeah,
I don't want to see a Bucks Raptors series. That's not fun.
Isn't that the same with hockey though? The same amount of teams make it.
Right, but I think basketball of all the sports can be most carried by 1 or 2 great players. So you're never going to see an 8 seed win the finals. Not anymore. It's never going to happen. Football 6 seed absolutely can happen. Hockey almost had one 2 years ago. Wild card teams make it in the playoffs in baseball and in football. It happens. In basketball, the Knicks are not winning the finals. They're not going to do it.
Thanks, man.
It's not happening.
Solid bird.
You probably could have picked another bad team that wasn't one of our favorite teams.
Well, I was looking at Rocco's mug on my screen, so I went with the Knicks. But I just as much as I love basketball, the sport, and I love the stars, there are 5 teams who have a shot to win the championship this year. You know that now, today. Forget when the playoffs start.
The hockey's my favorite one.
It's so fun.
I couldn't even say it with a straight face, man. No, it's the worst. It's the worst because I don't like the sport and because that stupid tie rule, giving people points for ties, is it's one of the most infuriating thing in all sports. So mine is definitely football, and then basketball, baseball, hockey.
I would agree with you, Dale.
Thank you. Thanks for being right, Rocco.
Or you're both wrong. Well, I don't know. You guys decide.
There you go. There you go. Wrong again.
All right, let's talk about this segment that we're going to call waiver time. So look, buys and injuries are now affecting everybody at this point. So if they're not, congratulations, you're very fortunate to this point. So, we're going to switch up the waiver segment just a little bit here and decide maybe who could help more as opposed to like, is this player worthwhile or whatever. We're going to look at two guys and match them up kind of and look at them with similar availability, similar type of production to this point and maybe projected forward and decide, which one we're more interested in. If you're interested in both, you could say it. If you're interested in neither, you could say it. Or if you want one more than the other, certainly chime in with that. Let's start at the quarterback position here with Baker Mayfield, who's owned at 37% right now, or Mitchell Trubisky owned at just 23%.
I can't with Trubisky. I know he's coming off of a 6 touchdown game. I just trust Mayfield more, which is funny because I definitely trust the Bears offense more. But yeah. I think that's more as a result of the running game. I do like the weapons Trubisky has. We've seen literally one game in his career where he made really, really good decisions at a consistent basis. Now, yes, it was the most recent game, which is helpful, but I just think I would opt for Mayfield. I'm not feeling super confident, crazy, pound the table about it, but Baker. What's scary about Baker is the Browns aren't scoring a ton of points, but he did throw for 342 yards last week, 295 the week before that. So the production's getting there. They just got to get in the end zone a little bit more. And I just kind of trust, I guess, the guy who's throwing 1 touchdown pass a game to pick it up more than the guy who's throwing 6 to even come close to that ever again.
Well, first of all, the correct answer to this is Sam Darnold. I'll take him over both. But no, I'm just kidding. I just had to throw that in. See, this is kind of for me I was legitimately going to go with whichever group I think has the better weapons, and I think they're so evenly well matched in terms of weapons. I'll take Jordan Howard over Carlos Hyde, but it's closer than I'd like to admit it. And then even the backup running backs, Cohen to Johnson. I mean, Chubb gives them a slight advantage at running back, but I think the Bears receiving core is better. But Jarvis is definitely the best of the group. So it's so hard to do it. I think I'm going to lean with Baker. And actually, I was originally going to go with Mitch, but I think I lean with Baker because it took a 6 touchdown game by Trubisky for their stats to be very similar in a per game basis. Right. You know what I mean? So without that 6 touchdown game, Baker's actually ahead in stats. Now, obviously, you can't take it away from Mitch because he did it, but he's not going to do that again. So I think Baker's the more consistent option at this point. Maybe not as high of a ceiling, but definitely not going to lose you a week where Trubisky could go goose eggs on you.
Yeah, I would go Mayfield just from this regard. I don't think we've seen the full package yet with Baker Mayfield. Really, we haven't with either one of these guys, if we're being honest. But there's always that element of what he's going to be able to do with his legs as well. And I don't think we've even really started to crack, the egg, so to speak, on what he's going to do. He's only had 8 times that he's actually rushed the ball this year to this point. I would expect, as things get more intense, he gets some more film on him where guys figure out how to make him a little more uncomfortable in the pocket. You'll start to see a little bit more of that. And honestly, when you look at just their immediate schedule coming up, it's a lot more favorable for Mayfield. He's got the Chargers this week, but then gets Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh back to back. Those are not 2 defenses that are really stopping anybody through the air right now. So, I think maybe based on some of the matchups that he has left and the rushing element, I would go Baker Mayfield. All right. So let's talk about some wide receivers here. And somebody's got to help me out on this one because I want to make sure I get it right because I've heard this pronounced 150 ways, all different. So Kiki Kute.
No, QT.
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 Like cutie pie.
Like
There we
cutie
go.
pie.
So Cutie Pie.
It's the least masculine name that's ever been in the NFL.
Right.
Kiki QT.
All right. Or Chris Godwin.
There you go.
QT is owned at 33%, Godwin at 38%. Both have really shown flashes to this point, nothing really super consistent. Is there one that you'd prefer over the other here going forward?
I'm going to argue with you that Kiki's been extremely consistent because he's only played 2 games, and in both games he's put up good numbers.
Mr. Sample size.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, no. I mean, I'm not picking him over Antonio Brown, but in this straight up, you're talking about a guy who, since he's played the last 2 weeks, has kind of – listen, Will Fuller is still a big play threat, but in terms of targets and ability to be involved in more than just deep balls, Kiki's the number 2 receiver there in the last 2 weeks. At best, Godwin's your 3.
Well, I think – to respond, I don't think he's still battling that hamstring. That's my opinion on that. I still think Fuller's the 2. I'm not crushing Kiki here. I think he's a solid player. But to answer why you said he's number 2, I just don't think Fuller's ready yet.
Yeah, but even when he is ready, he catches deep balls.
Yeah, no, we just said like 2 weeks ago how he's completed the route tree now, and he's not a deep threat guy anymore.
Well, that's how he scores his touchdowns, though.
That's how most receivers score their touchdowns. Like Fuller went. He had 2 straight weeks with 9 and 11 targets, 100 yards each, and then he pulled a hamstring. So, listen. I don't want to come off wrong. I would pick QT here too, just because I'm catching myself. I banged on Will Fuller last year because you can't just put up production on those few targets, and then. Now QT comes in and scores a touchdown in both games or 100 yards in both games, one or the other. Truth is, that's just how this offense is built. They're going to have guys that put up big numbers. They just are. So I kind of think, we touched on, I think the Bucs offense is likely to kind of slow down a little bit and back off, and Godwin might be the guy that backs off. I think QT has that solid number 3, maybe number 2 until – Fuller's healthy, but he's definitely got a solid role in that offense.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. I actually think that these are 2 guys that I like in spots right now. I think if you're looking, with the rest of the season in mind, I would lean toward QT. But I really like Chris Godwin for the next couple of weeks, until we know for sure that Jameis Winston isn't going to go ahead and target him, basically. It's a guy that by all accounts he's had a good rapport with all off season long. He kind of became a little bit of a sleeper in fantasy circles based on some of the reports that we were hearing. And then he looked pretty good, definitely at times over the first couple games here. So, I think he's more consistent than Deshaun Jackson. So if you're a little bit more worried about some of that up and down, I don't think that's really who Chris Godwin is. I don't know. I think long-term QT is the answer, but there's something to be said for Chris Godwin as well. All right, so let's talk here about another set of wide receivers, and just so we don't get Rocco upset because we left Sam Darnold out earlier, Robbie Anderson owned at 33%, or Mohamed Sanu owned at 32%.
I actually like Sanu this week. Going up against the Bucs. I can't get enough Falcons or Bucs in that matchup. So this week I go Sanu, but I think Anderson for the season, if we're talking about who you're going to claim in your season long, I just think we're actually seeing it. The more his timing gets going with Sam Darnold, the better things are going to be. The more Sam's going to learn how to use Robbie Anderson. He's not going to be captain check down to Quincy Enunwa, who, I'll say it for you, his catch percentage somehow went down this week.
Hey, I wasn't gonna say it. I wasn't gonna bring it up.
He was like 0 for 13, but
it was like 0 for 4. So
it was 5.
It was 5. But the point is, we all didn't know what receiver was going to be fantasy worthy. But I think to a man, you would have to say we knew Robbie Anderson was the most talented receiver on the Jets. Yeah. It was just a matter of using his skill set to the best of his ability. And I think we just saw Sam start to do that. Now, is Robbie going to score twice a week? No. But would we have said last year? Would we have said last year he was going to score 6 straight weeks? No. And then he did it. So that's the player he is. Once Sam kind of has more confidence and is willing to open up the offense more and utilize him, I think he's the guy. Again, all that said, I go Mohamed Sanu if you need a guy this week.
See, my thing with Robbie is that he is good when the Jets are running the ball and play action is there, because he can absolutely take the top off of the defense. But that O-line is not good enough for Sam to just step back there and just sit. So it's all play action. I mean, you look at when he's scoring his touchdowns, it's when the running game is extremely effective, and he's beating guys on literally both touchdowns this week, play action pass, and because you have to be honest, and he's getting single coverage.
Hopefully they saw this week that works, though.
Well, of course, but if you have a team that's better at stopping the run, then you don't have to keep the Jets as honest. So if Darnold does not have all the time in the world to sit back there on a play action pass, and Robbie can't do that, then I don't really like him. Now, I will say that I'm kind of going to lean towards Robbie on a season-long here thing as well, because I still think as the season progresses, Calvin Ridley's going to get more involved than he already is, and we're going to see Sanu drop to like a number 3 role. Yes, in a great offense, but if I have to guess which one of these guys is going to score on a week-to-week basis, I would take Robbie, because we saw him do it last year, and now he's got 3 through 5 games this year. Not record-setting paces, but at least as consistent as he was last year.
That's really good for a 33% owned player.
Yeah. I said it pretty much the same thing as you, Miles. I'd take Sanu for this week. He's playing great right now. He's had 3 really good weeks in a row, and now a delicious matchup this week. But yeah, I've said from the beginning of the season that Robbie Anderson is 100% the Jets receiver that I want to own long term. I didn't expect it to take off right away. I said that from the beginning of the season. He's still the guy that I like in the Jets offense and here between those two. But I mean, how can you not take, even if obviously the Jets offense isn't quite the same caliber as Atlanta's offense, but it's still a number 1 receiver, at least by my projection, in an offense with a young quarterback that's gaining confidence.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about Christian Kirk at 9% or Ryan Grant at 5%. These are popular waiver grabs this week. Thinking about this from a more long-term perspective, who are you more interested in?
I'd grab Kirk. I don't really like either player too much. And it's funny because I actually like both players as far as the value they're giving based on what you expect. I mean, Ryan Grant's playing really well as the number 2 there. I just think when T.Y. comes back, I don't know what that does for him.
I think it's better for him.
Yeah, probably. That's why I don't mean for that to come off negatively. Ultimately, I would just go Kirk because the same reason that I like Robbie to grow with his young quarterback. I think the more Josh Rosen kind of gets comfortable with Christian Kirk, he's a big player. He was at Texas A&M and he is now. And it's only going to help him that the offense will get better with Josh Rosen once Fitzgerald's healthy. David Johnson's starting to come around, I guess. 2 touchdowns, still not putting up the huge yards. But ultimately, I just would rather take the upshot on Kirk possibly becoming the number 1 target for Josh Rosen.
I think it's Kirk because I think he has the ability to become the number 1 target. And once T.Y.'s healthy, Ryan Grant's 2 at best. Andrew's been throwing a lot to Carlos Rogers. Jeez Louise. Chester Rogers. There we go. He's throwing a lot to Chester Rogers too, even when T.Y.'s out. So those numbers are going to obviously change slightly once T.Y.'s back, which could be as early as this week. So I just like Kirk because I think long term he's got a better chance for success and big playability.
Yeah, I was wrong last week when Rocco asked me for some advice who I thought he should start. I said Ryan Grant. The reason I was wrong is because he just suits better as a number 2 receiver. He's not a number 1 receiver. I thought it was going to lead to more targets. I told Rocco Luck's going to probably throw 50 passes again, and Ebron can't get 30 of those. And then he got pretty close.
So. And then Ebron got 30 of them.
Grant leads in snap count with a better quarterback. Their percentages are pretty close, 78% to 74%. But here's why I don't figure that in. This is crazy. I'm going to drop a crazy stat for you. Grant leads in snaps per game, 38 snaps to 57 snaps.
Right.
He's getting 20 more snaps with a really good quarterback and a guy that likes to throw the ball long, is gaining confidence. So, and he's going to be single covered all the time. We don't really know. I guess Christian Kirk's going to be double covered if he starts to do anything. Ryan Grant's never going to be. So I like him long term.
I think your best argument is the percentages don't tell the whole story. The Cardinals are running like 12 plays a game.
Yeah.
As an offense. So it's hard to roster any of them because even when they have a decent week, which they kind of just did, it's still not a lot of plays. They're just not sustaining drives.
He's on the field for 38, and they're still running the ball 20 times a game.
Now, if he's on the field for 38 and one of them's a 75-yard touchdown every week, I'm okay with that.
Might not be sustainable.
It's probably unlikely to stick.
Yeah, we said it wasn't sustainable and then Will Fuller did it. So
True.
It's the fantasy community's favorite word, regression. It's coming. All right, let's jump down here to the last one because I don't really want to talk about tight ends anyway. And this one is kind of a hot button thing after the news that Jay Ajayi is now down for the season. Who do you want more long term? Corey Clement, 28% owned, or Wendell Smallwood, 7% owned?
I actually have claims in for both in pretty much every league, mostly because I was an Ajayi owner in pretty much every league. I have, however, prioritized my Clement claim, and I think that's because Smallwood is just proving himself to be such a liability in every aspect of the passing game, and the franchise is number 11. So if he can't catch the ball or protect, why is he playing? So
he can't do anything.
I mean, he is going to play, assuming all of these rumors coming out that Philadelphia is basically going to trade for like Walter Payton. Because everybody, it's David Johnson or it's Shady McCoy or it's Le'Veon Bell. I actually heard Jordan Howard earlier today. Like, it's not happening. So assuming they stick with the stable they have, I think the big thing with Smallwood is once Sproles comes back, that probably spells the end of most of Wendell Smallwood's time. So I would prioritize Corey Clement for sure. He's a better player.
I think that you guys are in a little bit of trouble in the sense of you're going to become extremely predictable because when Smollett's in the game, it's a run, and when Clement's in the game, it's a pass. Like, I mean, it's just unfortunately. I mean, Doug's good enough to kind of scheme around that, but I mean, that's kind of
we're acting a little bit there like Corey Clement's just a receiving back. Like, he went to Wisconsin, right?
No,
He's like third in the nation in rushing.
No. I understand that, but the way they use him, I mean, look at what he did in the Super Bowl.
He's running with Ajayi or like Garrett Blunt.
Well,
he has to be the passing down back.
He hasn't.
No, I hear what you're saying. Smallwood is
more
for sure the classic runner, but I think it's because he sucks in the passing game so much.
Well, right, but as a fan, like you say that, but how many times are we frustrated when Smallwood is running routes and dropping balls? You know what I mean? And then how many times
on the field I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, how many times were we frustrated last year when Blunt was in passing situations and running routes? Like, it doesn't necessarily matter. And then they give you that line afterwards that it was just where we were at in the rotation. So we're not going to stop calling the plays because of where we're at in the rotation, and just silly responses like that. But I actually agree that it's Corey Clement here, just because he is the more versatile back. Now, in the short term, coming back from the hamstring injury, Smallwood might get more play like this week on a short week. There's always that chance. So if you're desperate and you need somebody this week, and you only get Smallwood, you could do a lot worse, because I do think that he's going to get the lion's share of like the actual rushes this week. But I think long-term Clement is the play here. Like, this is the potential kind of pickup that could turn a season around if he plays to the potential that he has. We kind of saw him,
especially if you had Ajayi.
Yeah, I mean, we had him in the playoff. We saw him in the playoffs last year in the Super Bowl. Like, what he could do when he gets the ball. This could be like one of those huge waiver claims for the season here.
I'm not as pessimistic as Miles, I guess, in this regard. I will not be shocked at all if they have a new running back by week 8 at the deadline. Howie and Doug seem like the type of guys that are going to go out and make that happen. I just, especially if the division like is within reach, like which
It's
at this point,
such a bad division.
I saw a meme today of 4 different color garbage cans, and it said the NFC East.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot to add. I did say Corey Clement. The only thing I will add, I wouldn't start either this week. I would look elsewhere. If you're planning long term, I would pick Clement, but I wouldn't start either this week.
Well, okay, gun to your head.
Oh,
you have to start one of them this week. Who do you start this week?
Why wouldn't I go to the waivers? That's what I would do. I would go to the waivers. I would be shocked if I couldn't find in every league a better waiver pickup for this week.
So this week with Clement still a little banged up, you don't think Smallwood's a great play, being basically the lead back in that offense?
No.
Wow.
I don't.
I feel like any back you're going to get on waivers right now is at least a 50-50 split, if not worse.
I would take it.
That's crazy.
I'll find 5 to post tomorrow.
That's crazy talk right there.
All right, let's talk about our friends at Gorb here. Listen, the hashtag GHORBH, it's all over social media. You know, you see it here tonight. Rocco's got the stylish hoodie on right here. And I think we have to make kind of a play here. You know, all spring and summer long, all over social media, I saw the hashtag Gorb, giving us that reminder that in life, you've got 2 choices. You could either get hungry or be hungry. And everybody was, you know, looking loose and wearing their, you know, summer gear and, you know, modeling it up. But it's hoodie season. So I'm making the play right now that we need like a campaign for like chunky guys comfortable in hoodies with the hashtag Gorb. So let's make that happen. I think we need to be all over that. That's like right in my wheelhouse. But on a serious note, Gorb.com. Check them out, GHORBH.com. All kinds of great apparel, you know, shirts, T-shirts, long sleeve, hoodies, with that constant reminder that in life you've got 2 choices. You could either get hungry or be hungry. Check them out at Gorb.com, GHORBH.com.
Did you say that because you're staring at a chunky guy wearing a Gorb hoodie?
Well, I feel like I told you.
Stand up and fight me right now.
That's my wheelhouse. First of all, that's my line. And second of all, like the chunky guy comfortable in a hoodie is my wheelhouse. Like that's where I live all winter long.
I feel like you're calling me fat.
All right, let's look at some forward thinking here. We'll look at some players who are going to require some decisions to be made here for one reason or another moving forward. An interesting one right out of the gate. If you own James Conner, are you standing pat on him, or are you going to try and maybe move on from him soon with the thought in mind that Le'Veon Bell is supposed to come back here over the Steelers bye? Obviously, you know, rumors are out there that the Steelers are going to employ a committee approach. So, you know, Conner might not just go right back to the bench, but curious here, how would you handle the situation?
I am not buying it for 1 second. If I'm a James Conner owner, I'm riding or dying with him right now, and I think it's the right call. Like, I mean, I could be proven wrong, but right now I think there's so much turmoil going on around Le'Veon Bell, and even when he comes back, there's still fences to be mended. And who's like, you know, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Who's to say he's not going to come back and be like, my hamstring hurts, my back hurts, like, you know. I personally, I said it a couple weeks ago, and I still think it now. I personally think that Le'Veon Bell has already played his last snap for the Steelers.
For me, it just depends, I guess, what you're going to get in return. I mean, I'm a huge believer in you don't have untouchable players. Everybody can be had for a price. But why would you trade James Conner right now? Because why would the Steelers show any loyalty to Le'Veon Bell if and when he decides to report?
Zero.
What's the point? Why? They're not struggling because of James Conner. They're not struggling because they don't have Lev. Yeah, Le'Veon Bell's a better player than James Conner, but for what loyalty he's shown his team, why are you going to reward him with a bunch of touches and get him a bigger contract in the offseason? I mean, I'm sure his contract's going to be gigantic regardless, but I don't know. I'd reward James Conner for busting his hump for me.
I mean, it's the right thing to do. You hope they do. The Steelers have been known recently to not do the right thing. So I wouldn't be shocked if they go to at least 50-50. And I've said from the beginning, and for since I've watched James Conner, he's the type of back that gets better as he gets more carries all the time. He does. So if he's getting 50-50, he might get run out of the room by Bell.
All right, so obviously, some decisions to be made there based on preference, but I think the overall feeling is kind of hang on. You know what I mean? Unless you're blown away by something, there's really no guarantees there. So, I think that's something that we do as fantasy owners is we read a couple stories and see a couple tweets and we react. And I think that's what's happening with the fact that, he's on the transaction trend as one of the most traded guys this week. So
at this point, my suggestion would be, unless you think if James Conner is playing at 100%, the trade still makes you better, don't trade him. Just plan on still playing with him.
I would treat it as such. Look at where he is each week, in terms of overall running back to that point, points wise. And then if you're getting the value for that spot, absolutely. But don't just sell on him because the thought of Lev coming back is there, because I don't think it's going to amount to anything in the long run.
All right, so among the players the teams are attempting to buy in on fantasy wise here is Kenny Golladay. He's up at the top of the transaction trends as far as people who are trading for him. The few leagues where he is still available, he's being added at a high clip this week. Do you expect him to kind of maintain this number one production that he's been putting out? Or is that passing attack going to kind of even back out across the whole wide receiver core?
I don't see how you could say he's not going to stay the course. I mean, you're saying number one production, and he's their number two productive receiver because Golden Tate is ahead of him. What I do think is that he's past Marvin Jones for sure, both probably in ability, but definitely in Stafford's comfort level there. He has more targets than Jones 4 of the 5 weeks, but he's still behind Golden Tate in that category. So the good news there is for those trading for him, or you said picking him up. Good Lord, I wish I was in the league where he was still a free agent. But, ultimately Detroit throws enough to absolutely be able to have, they sustain 2 starting caliber receivers for fantasy purposes. So he is their number 2, but he's in that kind of situation where he can still be your number 2 and you'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you view him in that light, you're not viewing him as your number 1, so that way you're not necessarily expecting that every week he's going to be blowing up these big plays. But when you view him as your number 2 and he does continue to put up some big plays here and there, and then maybe when he has a week where those 4 catches only equate to 50 yards and he doesn't find the end zone, you're not as disappointed then. But again, you hit it on the head. I think he has surpassed Marvin Jones at this point, and he's more of a big play threat than anybody that they have on that team. So he will continue to see those opportunities, and he's really done a good job, especially, over the last 4 weeks of cashing in with the big play. All right, so given Geronimo Allison and Randall Cobb, with them being so up and down in that passing attack, how long until Marquez Valdez-Scantling and EQ St. Brown, which we have decided early on, that's all we're calling them, we're not getting into the Equanimous every time, are really fantasy relevant?
We should think of another nickname for Marquez Valdez too. That's ridiculous as well. So
it seems like MVS is just going to happen. So
if he stays relevant, he's going to MVS.
That's the offensive version of Leighton Vander Esch.
Anyways, to answer the actual question, I think they just proved that if either of the regular starters are inactive, they're going to be relevant that week. I mean, ultimately, it's Aaron Rodgers. So any starting receiver on the Packers any given week is very fantasy relevant. So Aaron Rodgers will make you even better than you already are. And I don't think they're bad players, but they weren't exactly first-round picks. So, but Aaron Rodgers makes you better. He just does.
Here's my concern here. And I see a lot of people are adding these guys this week, and probably rightfully so, to like take a flyer on them. But doesn't Mike McCarthy just seem like the kind of guy who is just beyond stubborn? You look at the snap counts at the running back position.
Oh, I don't want to. It's frustrating.
Like,
it's frustrating.
You go Williams, Montgomery, Jones. Jones is, and it's like, it's not even close. Jones is a distant third. Jones is clearly the most talented back that they have on that team. But due to just stubbornness of Mike McCarthy, he's at the bottom of the food chain. So it just feels like this is the kind of situation where it's like, hey, Geronimo Allison has been here for years. You know, he knows the exactly what I want to do. He's a system kind of guy. And yeah, he's going to give you 2 for 40 every week. You know, it's just frustrating to me. I don't know. Am I alone there?
No, what's frustrating to me is that, and I look at the wide receivers the same way I look at the running backs, because McCarthy's telling a different story out loud than what he's actually doing on the field. Because 2 weeks in a row, he's like, oh, well, I think we really need to get Aaron Jones involved more. And then he doesn't. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's the same in the passing game. Like, listen, outside of Devontae Adams, I don't – you can't trust any of these wide receivers because you have no idea what week to week is going to bring you. You just can't.
Yeah, I guess the way I answered the question is just more if you're in a desperate enough situation that you're looking at Marquez Valdez-Scantling and EQ St. Brown, you can do worse.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah, I mean, mistakes were surely made, but hey, it's realistic. If you're there, you could do worse dart throws than a guy playing every snap with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
That's kind of my point. I certainly am not sitting here touting either player as a great waiver ad this week, but if you're looking at those players, you could do worse.
All right. Well, we were going to talk about the Cardinals here for a second, but we kind of went and rabbit trailed off on this earlier. So we're going to skip down here to the last one here. And CJ Uzuma, he's the only healthy tight end right now in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been doing a nice job of having some offensive firepower this season, but this has not been a guy who's been the picture of consistency, you know, even through his college time. So is he a streamer option for you at tight end, or is this just like another player at the tight end position and you're passing at this point?
I'm out. He's just a guy. He only had 2 targets on Sunday. Like, if you're desperate, I guess, because of the way that Andy Dalton goes after the tight end in the red zone, because Tyler Eifert was, 13 touchdowns a couple years ago, and then we had Croft as, like, a viable guy last year. I guess you could do worse as a streamer. It's a good offense, but personally, I don't like to rely on that touchdown. I'd just rather look and get a bigger target guy and hope for kind of more production, because you run the risk of a 2 for 11 kind of situation.
Yeah. I only kind of added him to the agenda here because I saw how much he was being claimed and added to this point, and it was kind of alarming. You know, when you look at the tight end landscape out there, there's still guys in a lot of leagues, like you can still pick up a Jordan Reed. You know what I mean? Like maybe less so this week now that his bye is already over, but his availability was still really high. Like there's still guys who, you know, an Austin Hooper who, yeah, I mean, he's inconsistent from week to week as anything, but he's still a legitimate threat in a high profile offense. So I don't know. I guess I felt almost like as a public service announcement to our listeners, I almost needed to bring this up to say, please do not make a waiver claim and use a priority on CJ Uzuma. Please don't.
I mean, listen, even with Eifert out of the lineup, he's still no better than the 5th receiving option there, because Bernard and Mixon are both getting more targets than their tight ends not named Tyler Eifert. So as soon as Eifert leaves the lineup, the tight end position drops to 5 because Eifert's special when he's healthy. You know what I mean? So don't. This is like one of those classic. Don't assume that next guy up gets same production or same targets or same look, because it does not equate to that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, there are going to be weeks where CJ Uzuma is relevant and has really good weeks, but you're going to be frustrated trying to predict it. Like if you're purely streaming and there's really no better option that week, he could have a good week. He could have 70 yards and he could have 2 touchdowns, but it's going to be a high risk every single week, and you're going to be frustrated more than you're excited.
Yeah, I'll say this last kind of thing on this because we spent way more time on him than we need to. But like, I think a lot of the appeal is the matchups. They're going to play Pittsburgh this week, then they've got Kansas City, then they've got Tampa Bay. Those are some, as Deal would say, delicious matchups.
Delicious.
Yeah, so I think that's probably some of the appeal here. So, but again, to Deal's point, you're going to be frustrated. So
this week could be one that you're not, though.
Could be. All right, let's get some initial reactions here. We'll talk through some things that we've seen so far, some trends that are popular right now, and talk about what we might be concerned about here. While the snap counts were very close last night, the production was surprisingly very far off between Ingram and Kamara. Do you expect that to continue? And how should Kamara owners react at this point? Because we're seeing a lot of social media panic, outright panic. Like, I thought some of it was sarcasm, but apparently a lot of it was not.
Yeah, I don't know. I was on full tilt last night. We were chatting as a group as the game was going on because in 2 leagues I needed a half of Kamara and what he's been, and I didn't get it in the full game. It was frustrating. But now after letting it sit for a while, I'm going to chalk last night up to it was Drew Brees and Mark Ingram's night. It was Drew Brees' time to go after that record. And even when they got it, 201 yards, we knew he was getting it last night.
Yeah.
But let him keep celebrating his night. He's on fire. Why would we slow down? And then from the Mark Ingram perspective, the game was at no point ever a question. The game was over immediately. Yeah. So why not give him that heavy workload, work himself back into game shape? That just makes a lot of sense. So I think Sean Payton, as a smart coach, saw the game was in hand, said, hey, let's let Brees have his night. Let's work Ingram back in. We got our bye week. Let's not risk a stupid injury to our best player. With all due respect to Mike Thomas, but why run Kamara out there, I guess?
Yeah, and to kind of pad your point there, one thing that I think we have to pay attention to a lot as fantasy owners, and this is kind of a term that I hate, is game script. You know what I mean? If a team jumps out and jumps on a team and it's really at hand, and one of your star players is just not getting the run that you expected, well, obviously take a look and see that, did they really need them? You know what I mean? Why risk it? If you're the Saints, you're playing for a Super Bowl this year. Yeah. You're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. You're going to want Kamara late in the season and in the playoffs at his best. So am I going to be annoyed for a week when in a blowout against Washington, he doesn't get the snaps or the touches that I want? Probably. But I mean, ultimately, I think that's all going to level itself out, and the cream always rises to the top.
Let's not forget, it could have been in the game script 100% of the way. Hey, we've given this guy a ton of touches in the first 4 weeks because of lack of options, because of the Ingram suspension. It could have went into last night being you know what, we're going to give him as essentially a night off. You know what I mean? He'll get in if we need him, but if the game, like Miles said, if the game's at hand, we got it. We're just going to take a step back and give Kamara as much of the break we can. I feel the same way. I was PO'd about it last week, but it happened last week with Jordan Howard. The game script went the way it went. Trubisky got hot, and they're you know what? Let's not run Jordan Howard into the ground if we don't have to.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a good point. So they're on a bye this week. I expect that when they come back, you're going to see at least 10 more snaps that Kamara is involved in, and he's going to be more productive with what he gets. So it was just good timing to kind of wean him off a little bit, send him into the bye to kind of, refuel himself. So do not panic. Okay, which unsettled running back situation do you have more confidence in? I love throwing these questions in because a lot of times they're just a garbage situation, but I'm obsessed with it. So we're going to answer it. The Bucks with Jones and Barber, or the Colts with Hines and Mack and whoever else you want to really throw in there at this point. Do you have confidence in more than the other? And will any one back take control of either one of these?
I think that Nyheim Hines, the Colts backfield's his. I really think that. I mean, not at a Todd Gurley clip,
Sure.
but as far as versus the Bucks, I could see that being a split. Peyton Barber's been awful. I hope Ronald Jones does something for us. But I don't know. I'm not impressed at all with Jordan Wilkins. Marlon Mack just simply can't get on the field. And Nyheim Hines has looked really good for what the Colts need him to be. They're not going to be a bruising, run it down your throat offense. Why did you draft Andrew Luck? Like, you don't want to be that. They should. Now, you got to keep them honest with the run, and I think Hines can do that. But he makes them even more dynamic in the passing game. So for an offense like the Colts, I think he's going to be on the field a lot more than the other guys, especially with the fact that he's shown that he's okay in the run game too. And certainly as okay as the other guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
as backhanded compliment as I can offer.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're as okay as everyone else on the team too.
Yeah, I mean, look, neither one of these teams is a team that whether they admit to this or not, they don't want to line up and run it down your throat.
They're built to throw.
They're built to throw the ball. So take the guy who's going to be the most productive in the passing game element. And to me, it's clearly Hines at this point. Like, I think that there was probably some gaps there in some of his pass protection early on, which kept him off the field a little bit. I think they've kind of cleaned that up a little bit. And he's going to be productive moving forward.
I actually like Jones here. I hope you guys are right. I actually like Jones. For whatever reason, he couldn't get on the field ahead of Barber for 5 weeks. I don't know why in the world that would ever happen, because we saw what Barber offers. But I'm trusting that now that he's active, now that Jameis is back, and Ronald Jones is still the same athlete that he was last year. So I'm hoping that it somehow translates. He's more of the lead back guy. So I'm leaning on Ronald Jones. If I had to claim one of the four, he would be the one I claimed.
The one thing I do like about Jones, to jump in quick, he wasn't real productive, but none of the Bucs were real productive against the Bears.
Yeah.
He did only play 20 snaps, but he touched the ball on 11 of those snaps. He had 10 carries and a catch. Now
they're showing they want to use him.
Yeah, it was only 31 yards, but that was just a disaster of a game from Tampa as a whole. But I do like that when he's on the field, they're like, let's see what this guy can do.
For what it's worth, to Deal's point, that I did read something today that said that, it may have been in their plans all along. Dirk Cutter might have said, hey, we have an early bye. Let's not rush Ronald Jones onto the field. Let's transition this thing. So there is some kind of feeling from some of the writers close to them that, they may ramp him up here over the next couple of weeks. So we'll see. All right. Adam Thielen has been nothing short of phenomenal. He's leading the league in catches, targets, and fantasy points at the wide receiver position. He's second in yards. Where do you project Adam Thielen to finish?
Here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a simple answer, but they've shown you no reason to think otherwise, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I expect some of the other guys to kind of pick it up. We saw Odell break out this week. That's not a rarity. That's going to happen. You hope Julio Jones is eventually going to catch a touchdown pass or two. Two might be asking a bit much. One could happen. But, these other guys could pick up, but we're also not talking about a guy we all projected to be like receiver 25 having a breakout season. Like, we already thought he was 9 or 10. So why would, he's even better than we thought he was going to be in it. That's not a shot coming from Adam Thielen. I mean, I think I just don't see how he falls out of the top 5. That's what I'll say. I can't project one because of all these guys. Like, Antonio Brown might hit us with 290 and 4 touchdowns this week. It could happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't strike me as Adam Thielen's game.
When I say here, I just mean like he is taken his rightful place now as a top tier wide receiver. He went 1276 and 4 last year, and by all accounts, argue what you will, he's got a better quarterback now.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to argue anything.
Who's arguing that?
Well, no, I mean, like he went 1276 and 4 last year. So I mean, but like he's going to top.
He's good.
Yeah.
Now
he's good.
They're both good.
Yeah, so he's going obviously he's going to top.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, looks like he's gone. So I think
I'm here.
Okay.
All right. Well, look, here's the thing about Adam Thielen. Like, I think I didn't really know how to peg him versus Diggs this year. I thought Diggs might be more of like the big play element. But I think that the Vikings have kind of shown that like they don't really need that. They're just looking for a guy who is just going to put the work in. These guys could both be productive. But to me, Adam Thielen, I think he's going to finish a top 4 guy this year. I just don't see any way that he doesn't continue to be as consistent as he has to this point. He set the record now for most consecutive games here to start a season with 100 yards.
Did that surprise anybody to jump in there?
A little bit.
That's never happened. Not that he did it, but just that I know obviously I wouldn't project it from like 1984, but it surprised me that no one's ever done 5 straight.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't surprise me just because like we talk about it all the time. Guys who have 100-yard average per game is like almost unheard of as a wide receiver.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like as much as like that's the benchmark that if a guy gets to 100, he's elite. Yeah, but it doesn't happen every week. Right. Very, very few 1,600-yard seasons.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the Seahawks here. They've shown over the past couple weeks that they're now committed to the run game, which they've said in the past, but not really actually committed to. And it's been sort of effective here the last couple of weeks. So is Carson or Davis the better play here?
I think Davis has definitely been solid the last 2 weeks, but I'm going to follow the carries. They were 16-12 in favor of Chris Carson this week. And with his volume, he went for 116 yards. Now, I know Davis got the touchdown, and he has 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks. I'm just not going to let that sway me. I think Chris Carson's the better player. He's getting the ball more. He's more productive with the ball. The scores will follow. I'm going to start Chris Carson. It's likely, though. It's one of those, like, ignore the names. We might be approaching a 2-man flex-worthy backfield. We really could be approaching
how crazy is that?
Coleman. It's nuts.
The tides have turned.
Not just because it's Chris Carson and Mike Davis.
It's Seattle.
The Seahawks running game. It's insane. It's insane to me that we have possibly 2 flex-worthy running backs, and neither one is the guy they took in the first round.
Yeah.
I'm going to lean actually towards Davis just because I feel like he's coming on.
Like productivity.
Yeah.
Well, I do, except for the fact that Davis has gotten a late start to this this year, and he's getting the carries, he's getting the productivity because Carson started off really slow. So now Carson's being pushed, and he's being a little bit more productive, but Davis is more consistent in terms of the fact that he's done it for two consecutive games, which is why they brought him in and gave him this role.
I have to laugh because you're like Mr. I got to see it with David Johnson, and this is the second time tonight. You're like 2 games. This guy has buckets.
No. It's not like buckets. It's that I feel like the Seahawks
you're revolving teams around Mike Davis and Kiki QT at this point.
I'm not. I'm just saying, like, there's a reason why Mike Davis is getting the carries he's getting, and it's because Chris Carson was not effective in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, but if you want to talk about 2 games, 51 carries the last 2 weeks for Chris Carson.
Jeez.
He's gone over 100 in both of them. He scored 2 weeks ago. He didn't get in the end zone last week, but he had 116 yards on just 19 carries. So crazy. I think he's going to continue to be the workhorse there. I think he's kind of taking that opportunity, and he's going to run with it. I think he really is. I think he's your guy who's going to have the volume, and Davis is going to be your change of pace guy who could still be pretty productive in that role. So,
yeah.
All right, last thing here that we're going to talk about real quick. Is Dak Prescott now a definitive drop in fantasy leagues? He's one of the most dropped players right now. Despite his best game all year this past week, he still didn't finish as a QB1 this week.
Yeah. I mean, why? Why would you keep him at this point? I mean, if you're in a multi-quarterback league and it's one of the ones where like everybody carries a bench quarterback too, then I guess keep him. I mean, he is a starting quarterback still, so you need a guy for buys. But good Lord, why else would you keep him? Why is your hand up?
I don't know what's going on. If you're watching on YouTube right now.
I'd like to be called on. Did I not say that I was worried that Dak
Nobody
Prescott
called on you.
Yeah.
I'm saying it anyway. I said it at the beginning of the season that I'm worried that Dak Prescott could be like Mark Sanchez. Like if the running game is not 100% and the defense is not carrying you, that he's going to regress and turn into a non-startable fantasy quarterback and not good.
So,
but what's crazy is Zeke Elliott's leading the league in rushing.
yeah. So what's his?
That's what-
He's just trash. But he's just trash. That's why it's predictable, because Dak is trash.
Elliott's so good that it doesn't matter. But like they are predictable, so that when they're running, they can't stop Elliott. But they know when they're passing, and Dak is not cutting it.
Listen,
not to mention the fact that he's got the worst play calling head coach in the NFL right now.
We could kind of sum this up real easily, because you said if the defense isn't there and the running game isn't on point, both of those have been really good.
Yeah.
They're the only reason
their defense is great.
They're the only reason they're even competitive in games right now is those two elements. So this loser has no excuse. He is a hard cut right now.
Yes.
If you're in a multi-quarterback league where everybody has one on your bench, pick up Fitzpatrick.
He might come back.
Because he might come back and play again.
Yikes.
This loser.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to add anything after that. That's just, I feel like that's a good ending note.
All right. Speaking of ending notes, we've got to make our Survivor picks here. So
I felt like that was a good ending note.
well, it is for you.
Okay, I can sign off now. I can sign off now.
Technically, you're not involved in this segment.
It feels like we've said that 4 weeks in a row.
Yes, since week 2,
Yep.
Deal and Rocco have not been involved in this segment, but Miles and I are still alive and going strong. Miles has taken the Rams, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Patriots, and the Bengals. I have taken the Jaguars, the Rams, the Bears, the Packers, and the Saints to this point. I have been kind of picking Miles to go first here, so I will go first this week.
Can I ask Miles how nervous he was at 17-0?
Oh, I was Captain Cranky Pants. Not just for this, but the FanDuel one. I'm still alive, obviously. I mean, I'm picking the same teams, but the ESPN one too. The tiebreaker is point differential, and my first 4 weeks, what did I tell you guys? I was like tied for 8th in the country in point differential. So I'm like there to actually win some prizes, and I'm like, I'm gonna freaking lose to the Dolphins on the road. I was over it. And then 27 straight, so I'm feeling good. I'm still in the top 100 on ESPN.
Yeah, so one of the things that you don't want to really do is go with the chalk in these Survivor things, because that's where the herd tends to get thinned out. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the chalk this week and take the Vikings at home against the Cardinals. Look, we talked about it extensively earlier. The Cardinals are just not even running enough offensive plays at this point. The Vikings offense is really good. I expect their defense, as they continue to kind of get healthy here, get guys back into position, to get better. Every defense is kind of better at home anyway. I just don't see any way the Cardinals are going to score with the Vikings. So I'm feeling good about it this week to go with the chalk. I'm going with the Vikings.
I'm going to actually go with the other chalk, and I'm going to take one of my little risky picks here. You're going to have to take some average teams to survive for 17 weeks. I'm going to put my trust in Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans, also at home against the Buffalo Bills this week. Couple reasons. Number one, I don't think Buffalo is good enough to win back-to-back games. They showed it after they beat Minnesota. They got beat up the next week. Houston's on a 2-game winner. I like the way the offense is rolling a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins seems to be, he keeps being questionable with all these injuries, but he seems to be fine. QT coming in, I'm going to give him, greatest 2 games of all time. Will Fuller's getting healthier. I love the way Watson's playing. Defense, cloudy and water, unblockable. I overwhelmingly think the only thing keeping Buffalo in games overwhelmingly is Josh Allen's scrambling ability. You're not scrambling on J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney. You're just not doing it. So I like them to keep Buffalo really in check, score plenty of points, and keep me alive here through 6 weeks. Let's go, Texans.
All right, there you have it, the Survivor picks for Week 6. And that's going to be it for this week's edition of the show. good luck to everyone here coming up in week 6. Be sure to keep up with us on social media, facebook.com/footballgoons. On the Twitter, we are at footballgoons. And on the YouTube channel, you could subscribe and comment and like videos here. Leave comments on all 3 forms of social media, and we will get back to you. If you want to ask us lineup questions, just general life questions, you want to ask us about food, whatever it is, we definitely want to talk to the Goon Squad out there. So hit us up on social media. Make sure you stay tuned to footballgoons.com as well. Each and every week we drop this podcast the very next morning after we're live. We also have our Goons, Ghosts, and Daily Picks coming at you every Wednesday morning on the site. And then Thursdays, we'll hit you with our updated rankings for that week for fantasy football as well. We'll catch you guys next time.